So good evening, good afternoon, or good morning to everyone, depending upon where you're located today. My name is Dr. Lisa Lorenzino. I'm here in Montreal, and I'm serving as your chair today for this session, which we're very much looking forward to. We're glad that all of you could be here with us today. So each of the presentations will be 30 minutes in length, and we will have time available for questions within that 30 minutes at the end. If you do have a question, please be so kind as to put it in the chat, and then I will read the question out loud, and so that we can have our presenters to approach the question. So to begin with, we're thrilled to have with us from the Federal University in Rio de Janeiro, Anderson Cesar Alves, and he will be presenting to us today on domains of the expert teacher's competency in music performance. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'll be presenting my research that I finished my PhD last February. I'll present this research, domains of the expert teacher's competency in music performance. Introduction. Research on expertise has been undertaken predominantly in the field of education, which I consider important to bring about innovative results in the realm of music performance. The research of Dreyfus, 1980, Berliner, 1980, and NBPTS platform, 2002, provided the development of a framework of skills that would express the hypothesis that characterizes an expert teacher in musical performance. The objective. The aim is to analyze and describe the methodological procedures used in teaching practices, as well as construct a model of expert teachers' competency domain in teaching performance. These three researches, the Dreyfus, the Berliner, and NBPTS platforms, allowed me to develop this table 1 that consists in 8 fields of competencies that characterizes the expert teacher in music performance. Specific competencies, mastery of knowledge, use of knowledge, perception and context evaluation, decision make, work pattern, autonomy, and acting in complex situations. And this table grounded my observation, that's empirical observation. The methodology. The methodology used to this research was concurrent protocol analysis, Erickson, 2006. Concurrent protocol analysis consists of the possibility to instruct the subjects to verbalize their thoughts in such a way that it does not alter the sequence and content of those thoughts through the completion of a task. And also, I semi-structured interviewed each teacher and a group of 3 students of those teachers. I choose 3 clarinet teachers, and the criteria for choice was the high level of performance of their students. And teacher Lucas, he has been teaching for 30 years clarinet. And teacher Felipe, he has been teaching for 28 years, and professor teacher Gabriel, he has been teaching for 26 years. And the procedure. Concurrent protocol analysis. The camera was turned on, and I stayed all time beside the camera, noting synchronously the speeches related to pedagogical decisions used by the teachers. At the end of the working day, each of the teachers explained the pedagogical actions highlighted by me through the lessons. The excerpts selected in the video, my means of marked and synchronized clues, I asked the teachers to think aloud about the pedagogical resources applied in the classes. I applied 4 observations with each teacher. And the semi-structured interview was conducted just after the 4th observation. And this protocol was applied in 2019, and I was at that time I was co-advised by Carl Under Ericsson. He co-advised me and he taught me how to apply his protocol. And unfortunately, in last year he passed. Data analysis. The, the data was transcribed and their sections grouped and related to the eight hypotheses in table 1. And the observations in data collection protocols developed based on table 1 generated 320 gigabytes of data. Triangulation. These three protocols, concurrent protocol, semi-structured interview with teacher and a group of students were triangulated. It allowed us to identify, explore, and understand the different dimensions of the research, reinforcing and enriching data interpretation. In table one was consisted by 8 fields of competence, and when analyzing the data, we noticed that two fields of competences were interrelated, and it has generated new fields of competence and specific competences. The teacher develops strategic guidelines for training performance and preparing intuitive and automated performance using repetitions or analysis in the case of new situations, independent of established and standardized guideline. Autonomy can overcome established pedagogical standards and create with opportunism and flexibility their interpretations and solutions for situations. So they do not depend on those pre-established standards. Here, a quotation. I work on the student's realization that what she thinks to be a mistake should be corrected by herself. I stimulated her thinking. I use a strategy for each student to suit the occasion as it arises. Here, one thing that I noticed that the teachers, they try to develop the refinement of perceptions of the students. These things I observed in the different classes with three different teachers. These two fields of competences generated a new field of competence called originality and capacity for innovation. The expert pedagogues develop musical perceptions and cognition refinement to lead their students to acquire motor, mnemonic, and expressive skills based on what their students present to them. The acquisition of performance expertise is a profoundly experimental, idiosyncratic process that cannot be restricted to generic guidelines, enshrined in specialized literature. Experts' pedagogical autonomy values versatility, encouraging the students to a deliberate, personalized, and self-regulated practice. Knowledge domain. Master of knowledge. The expert pedagogue demonstrates a deep understanding of the significant pattern of musical performance in its pedagogy, which is a result of extensive knowledge of the artistic production and the field and of his or her training as a performer. A quotation. At the beginning, when I was faced with a situation of teaching someone, I noticed that person's difficult, and I would analyze myself and think, how do I handle that? I would try to show the students how I did it through describing the action involved so that they would have a hint. I came across with professors that when they find students difficult, at that moment, there wasn't the outbreak, the pandemic. They took the instrument from the students and they tried to bring the problem into their bodies and think how they solve the problem and offer this hint to the students. Try this way. But as the teacher said at the beginning of their careers, and This field is generated a new field of competency called mastery in the knowledge field. The expert pedagogue demonstrates a broad mastery of knowledge and practice of the most complex patterns of musical performance in their specialty. This condition notoriously resulting from acquiring high expertise as performers allows them to envision pedagogical strategies beyond the generic orientations of the canonical literature. Therefore, it rises from their ability to foresee, identify, and solve specific performance problems. The use of knowledge. Use of knowledge. The teachers applies consolidated knowledge of the strategic guidelines for teaching in an objective and optimized manner. A quotation. How I'm going to attack it being extremely aggressive when I am completely passive? How am I going to get a passive sound if I'm extremely tense? So the students needs to bring his body into the performance as a means to be able to produce a certain sonority. And this is why many things don't happen. And it has generated a new field of competence, use of knowledge. The expert pedagogue's actions are instigated by the challenge of pedagogically testing their hypotheses about the acquisition of artistic excellence and by the feedback that pedagogical practices offer them as a resource for confirming these convictions. The support of this connection is the body from which the artist teachers become aware of their knowledge and on which their pedagogical expertise is based. Perception, context, evaluation, and acting in complex situations. The pedagogical expert performs a holistic assessment of the context of the performance, employing quick and precise standards for recognizing the learning capacities of his student, and is better adapted to the diversity of objectives of the different students, and acting in complex situations presents a holistic understanding of complex situations, transitions easily between analytical and intuitive approaches, and adapts to the diversity of students and their different objectives. I think, a quotation, I think music is like putting a puzzle together. You take a phrase and identify that suddenly the students play it well. But also from that point to the next, a blockage sets in, and I immediately identify what the problem is and proceed to work on that excerpt. Once the passage is detected, I create a punctuated exercise, make the passage more difficult, identify the problem, try to solve it. And when the passage is resolved, I go back to the phrase and the students realize that now it has fluidity. And these two fields generated just one field of competence, perception and evaluation of context. The expert pedagogues maintain a permanent holistic evaluation of context of performance and pedagogical actions in performance, employing agile and precise standards to recognize their students' learning process, considering the different performance situations that present themselves. This reviews their evaluation of the acquisition of skills from the performance multiple experiences with all co-participants and events in the music scene. Decision making. The teachers are able to make the best decisions, deploy intuitive and analytical strategies to solve performance problems. A quotation. Is it difficult? Make it harder. It's a strong study piano because sometimes the students want a color that isn't coming, and by slowing down the dynamics, these actions demand less physical muscular activity. Decision make. The expert pedagogue can make pedagogical decisions to solve performance problems, create immediate and compatible strategies with the skills of each student to observe the proposals. Their decisions are based on their ability to employ their practical knowledge as the experiential basis of the process. Work pattern. The teachers are able to address problem of a task demands and monitor learning, providing feedback to students and taking on more challenging goals. Teacher locus. What I do is awaken in the students ways that she can identify the problem in hand and urge her into figuring out its solution. An approach which goes far beyond the simply say, play it this way. Here is it's clear the refinement of the student's perception, work pattern. The The experts pedagogue developed a set of pedagogical strategies that become irregular their reference their modus operandi. It's about a functional pattern consolidated in the flexibility of adaptation to their students' particularities and cognitive demands. A basic pattern underlines all their actions in the teaching and learning process, thus establish pedagogical coherence and trusting relationships. Here is table two. Table one was developed with eight fields of competence. Now, two that field were interrelated and it became now six fields of competence. And in next slide, the unexpected happened in the research. The whole of the body in systematic pedagogical strategies. All of the teachers have listed performance strategies that address to the use of the body as a way to solve problem. It is worth noting that it's not the body that lifts fingers or presses fingers. The use of the body among music performance teacher in this research is directly related to embodied cognition, in which sensory motor and affective experience are intrinsically related to bodily experience. The whole of the body in systematic pedagogical strategies was remarkably observable in the treatment of data collected and was not contemplated in the initial model for assessing pedagogical expertise. The data revealed that embodied cognition was behind the teacher's teaching practices, and the cognitive strategies they use are related to the above-mentioned sensory motor and affective experiences, both deeply rooted in body experience. And it has generated a new field of competence, which we named embodiment consciousness. The embodied knowledge permeated didactics and provides new possibilities and solutions in the teaching of music performance. The main result of the work is that the embodied knowledge permeates didactics and will from there provide the making of new decisions and possibilities and new solutions in the teaching music performance. Embodiment consciousness. A quotation. We talk about color, but what color does music have? Music has no color, but we talk about dark sound, a bright sound, a grayer sound, a bluer sound, sadder, more melancholic. We have appropriated concepts from other arts or means of expressions. How should a sound be described without those linguistic borrowing? I use a lot of metaphors, and that is how I make my students understand. And this field of competence has generated, this data has generated a new competences called embodiment consciousness. The expert teachers use metaphorical appropriations from different fields of knowledge to access memories that evoke embodied meaning arising from other experiential bases that map the current performance experience. The expanded view of performance and its pedagogy allows them to develop memory schema activation strategies that favor the imagination of embodied simulation of action demanded by the performance. Closing considerations. A broad domain of these teachers They have a broad domain of knowledge and practice of most complex pattern of music performance. Metaphorical appropriations of various domains of knowledge, which evoke an expanded view of performance, the use of the body, and memory schemes as means to represent actions and affections. The continuous testing of hypotheses about the acquisition of excellence. The permanent holistic evaluation of the performance, context, and pedagogical actions, employing precise patterns of learning process recognition. Decision make based on the ability to apply practical knowledge as the experiential basis of pedagogical processes. Pedagogical autonomy that values versatility and encourages personalized and self-regulated deliberate practice. A functional pattern consolidated in the flexibility of the adaptation of the actions to the particularities and cognitive demands of the performance in training. Further investigation. The hypothesis based on this research pointed to an expertise evaluation model. The next step is to develop an evaluation protocol and further experimental research with non-expert teachers with 5 years of experience and with a group of students, and develop the evaluation model based on observation of novice teachers with the possibility of extending it to other instruments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anderson. And now I would invite any questions to be written in the chat, and we will answer those right away. Actually, maybe I could start off with a question here, Anderson. I'm wondering, what were the age levels of the students that were involved in this study?
22 or 9 students, or individual, semi-structured individual interview from 22 to 33.
So none of these were younger students at all. They were all like, the age was in the 20s.
In the 20s. In the
Right.
20s, yes.
Okay, so I'm wondering if you would have similar results with younger students, or how that would differ. Are you looking to expand your research to that kind of study?
Now, the next investigation, we are wondering to investigate non-expert teachers and a group of students to know how the teachers deal with problems, the students' problems, how they solve problems. And it was very interesting because I came across one professor that he doesn't play. He doesn't play at class. He's a clarinet teacher and he doesn't play. And I was thinking, how is it possible? Me as a professor, as a teacher, I play. Sometimes I play. To do this way, do that way. And I interviewed a group of 3 students of their students, and they love this. This teacher, he has 18 students. 18 students, and one student told me that one thing that he loves, that the teacher, he doesn't play, and that's a way that he can create it, his personality, his own sound, that the triangulation, when I triangulated the data, it can come up this result that they love this situation. And one strategy that this teacher use is to sing. He sings all the time. And the level of their student, the level is very high level. And another thing that happened about, I was Carl-Anders Ericsson was co-advised me at that time. And concurrent protocol analysis, the camera was recording all time. And if I followed the Ericsson's protocol. I should interrupt the class, and I told Ericsson, is it possible to record all day long, and at the end of the class, I with my notes ask, and sometimes the teachers they told me, sorry, I forgot, could we see, and I had in minute 2.230 you told it to play the different way, and we changed the name to joint protocol analysis, because the research is important, the eyes of the research in this protocol is very, very important.
Excellent. We have a question from Isabella Roux, and she asks, were the interviews about general questions about teaching, or
No.
No?
All the questions was based on was 6 questions, open questions, based on how did you solve problems, how the use of knowledge, the how was related in the 8 fields of competences on table 1. Each of the descriptions generated one question.
Mm-hmm. Isabel, is that clear enough for you, or would you like some more?
Yeah, it's the conceptualization of the teacher about those specific item you have in your 10 scale things. Okay, because I was just wondering if there was a kind of recall interview saying, okay, if you look at this, what have you done? But it's about the question of the Ericsson protocol, as I understand it. That's it?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, you answered it very well. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? I have another one. I'm working with a student who's here, Tayanara from Brazil, and we're just thinking about how much movement is so much more a part of teaching, we believe, in Brazilian teaching of music, as opposed to what we have here in North America. And I wonder if you looked at this concept of embodiment from other cultures, for example, or you're just, is there literature related to that from other cultures?
No, the literature, and one thing that was very, very interesting, that when my first chapter is a literature review, and I didn't write anything about embodiment.
Okay.
Just when I was last year, July last year, I rushed to write about embodiment, like cognitive, embodied cognition. And one thing that is really interesting is that the teachers, they don't know about this, about deliberate practice. They don't know about self-regulation. They don't know about metacognition, or even about embodied cognition. But I think intuitively they use it. And at that moment, my research question was, the development of expertise is related to the access of an expert teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And in my last research, of course, that maybe I think that there is exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
Exceptions, but I came across my results point to know that the way of teaching, the pedagogy of music performance could contribute to the development of expertise.
Excellent.